Coming to you from the mobile Hudson Media Group studio right here in the Uribe compound, this is Talking Politics, and I am the professor, Fernando Uribe. As we enter year 2, there's a lot to discuss, so let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. Folks, I normally get political during my opening monologue, but this week I'll make an exception. The reason I'm doing that is to honor the memory of Jersey City Councilman Michael Youn. As you all learned this week via social media, or the traditional online media sources, the councilman out of Jersey City passed away due to complications resulting from the COVID-19. Without a doubt, Jersey City residents everywhere are mourning the loss of this very dedicated public servant, but more importantly, he was a patriot, he was a proud father, and an even more dedicated grandfather. And undoubtedly, ladies and gentlemen, it's a tremendous loss for not just Jersey City, but Hudson County residents everywhere. Because when I think of Michael Youn, I think of a guy who was very transparent, very honest, and just sort of very down to earth. I had the pleasure of interviewing Michael Youn back in 2018 for my weekly podcast, Talking the Hudson. And for over 90 minutes, he pretty much was very out in the open and very forthcoming. Not only talking about the issues that matter most to his constituents in his ward, but more so for Jersey City, and why he wanted to remain a very active voice in the city council. As you're all aware, he was becoming a thorn in the side of Jersey City Mayor Sullivan for quite some time. There was even some rumors way before this pandemic even hit, that perhaps Councilman Youn would be included on Mayor Phillip's ticket as he seeks re-election in 2021. And we'll never know indeed if that would have happened, but ultimately Michael Youn always took pride in being a maverick and being an independent voice on the city council. Let me tell you something, I got to know Michael very well, and one of the things that I can say with considerable pride is he was always a gentleman. He was always just very friendly. I mean, that smile was undeniable. You knew when Michael was anywhere in the vicinity, whether it was a ribbon cutting ceremony, whether it was a fundraiser, whether it was a political event, or just meeting outside the council chambers. He was always willing to talk to you, to ask how you were, to ask if you need anything, and more importantly, if anything could be done better in Jersey City. And I'll tell you, I think back at those moments when I interacted with Michael Youn, and he was indeed a gentleman. And one of the things I remember vividly about his podcast appearance with me was the idea of, hey, no topic was off limit, and he answered every question. That's sometimes a behavior you don't normally see in every elected official, whether it be at the local, state, or even federal level. But that wasn't Michael. And he was a guy that, and you know what, who really went out of his way to help not only his constituents, but all Jersey City residents. He was that voice in the city council that really stood up for the regular guy. Not just those living in downtown in some of the luxury high-rises right off of, Newark Avenue or right off of Grove Street. He represented everybody from people in the Heights to residents along the South Side, along West Side Avenue, and even in Journal Square. That was the guy that Michael Youn was. And certainly, as we know, that his memory will be cherished for many years to come. And as a result of what's going on with the current coronavirus crisis, no social gatherings are permitted. So I'm hopeful sometime in the future, in the weeks and months ahead, when we get back to some sense of normalcy, that we'll see a memorial service for Michael Youn. He's a guy who's truly deserving of it. And I'll tell you right now, if I was a betting man, I would venture a pretty good wager that the line will go around the block and maybe down a few blocks in the Jersey City Heights. But let me just put in perspective here a wonderful obituary that was written by the McLaughlin Funeral Home. Again, you can check it out at their website online, of course, at mclaughlinfh.com. But I'll read you some excerpts from the obituary, and let me tell you, if this doesn't get you a little emotional, then I don't know what will. But as I was reading this, I got a little choked up right at the very beginning. As Michael Youn was born in South Korea in September 2nd, 1954, he did indeed die of complications from the coronavirus in Jersey City. He was the epitome of a good, honest, hardworking person whose personality was only outsized by his laughter. My goodness, like that opening statement right there tells you so much that you need to know about Michael Youn. He was a guy that just, when you walked into a room, like he could just brighten it. And I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here, folks. I'm not trying to be bombastic or braggadocious whatsoever on his behalf. I don't need to be. Michael Youn's character and his decorum, and quite frankly, his legacy speaks for itself. And at some point, as I just mentioned earlier, when we're able to have a memorial service for Michael Youn, listen, I really hope all of you take the time to attend it. He was a public servant like no other that I can remember in recent history. He left us way too soon, and he was a guy that went out of his way to help, his constituents. And that's something that, not many elected officials can say with a lot of transparency and consistency. As a matter of fact, one of the things I really enjoyed about interacting with Michael was his sense of style. And let me tell you something, for a guy that loves fashion, as you can tell, with my shirts and ties, let me tell you, when I would run into Michael Youn, I always asked him, Michael, how do you do it with those wonderful bow ties? And he'd always laugh and he says, it was just habit. And he'd be able to do it even with his eyes closed. That's how skillful Michael Youn was. And every time I got to run into him at any event, he had the most stylish bow ties. He had a certain style, a certain just amount of grace in his presentation. And that's what I remember most about Michael Youn. Never mind the fact that he was an outstanding public servant, but the guy was just real. The guy was just someone you wanted to talk to. He was a guy you probably wanted to sit down over a cup of coffee and just interact, and not just talk about politics, but talk about life, talk about business, talk about being an entrepreneur, all the things that he was extremely knowledgeable about. That's how Michael Youn should be remembered. That's how Michael Youn should be memorialized when we sort of get around to it. And I'll tell you, he's a guy that we lost way too soon. And again, if you haven't had the chance to read the entire obituary, do that at the McLaughlin Funeral Home website. Because I'll tell you, it's going to give you a moment of pause. And if it doesn't make you a little bit misty, I don't know. I don't know what will. Because I read it a couple of times, and every time that I read it, it's something that just stood out for me. And when I learned of his passing earlier in the week, it really just hit me like just a slap in the face. And it took a moment for me to sort of process what happened. And we're losing people, folks, on a daily basis due to the coronavirus. And all I can tell you is that currently, while we're seeing some progress being made in flattening the curve, way too many residents and citizens are still being diagnosed as testing positive and ultimately passing from this dreaded virus. In the meantime, let's do something in the honor of Michael Youn. Let's stay indoors. Let's stay inside. Let's stay alive. And let's honor his memory as often as we can, whether it be on social media. I know some residents, in just some video clips I've seen on YouTube and also on Facebook, as well as Instagram and Twitter collectively, I've seen residents go by his business and lay flowers and lay some sort of memorial there. I've seen people, again, and I'm hoping that they're practicing responsible social distancing when they're doing this, but that they honored him in such a classy and such a proper way. I hope we get to do that later this spring and maybe even this summer when we return to some sense of normalcy here in Hudson County, folks. Because if anyone deserves a memorial and anyone deserves a rightful tribute, it's indeed Michael Youn. Michael, rest in peace, my friend. You were gone way too soon. You were an outstanding public servant, but more importantly, you were just a terrific person, and we'll definitely miss you. And that's what I'm thinking about right now.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. New episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.
Edition of the three-time award-winning podcast Talking the Hudson, I welcome back the Dean of Hudson County Journalism and the newest columnist at the Tap Into Network, Al Sullivan. We spoke for over 90 minutes, and while it's always a very illuminating and informative episode with Al, here are some highlights for your consideration. First and foremost, we start off the program by discussing the legacy of Michael Youn, who I know hit Al very hard, as well as myself, and countless other residents throughout Hudson County this past week. Let's check out what he had to say about the legacy of Councilman Michael Youn.
Here nearby in Jersey City, and it was Monday, and I am on my phone, playing online. I remember I was playing chess online against a friend of mine, and I just get a notification. I see Michael Youn, and I'll tell you something, Al. I mean, this is a guy who I got to know a little bit. He was a good man. He was nice enough to come on this show back in 2018. But I got to know him when I went to council meetings and when I went to events, and he was always smiling, always eager to talk to you. Like, he was genuine, just always asked how you were doing. And I always envied him because, like, I'm a guy who loves bow ties, but I can never really wear them because they're so hard to tie together. And I mean, I have a couple bow ties, but I mean, they're like bow ties you wear for a tuxedo that you just, tie around your neck and clip on. But Michael, you could tell, was a guy that took pride in, like, sitting in front of the mirror or just did it on his own. But besides the style and besides the transparency, he was a good public official. Like, he was a guy that was loved in his ward. And I know that Bruce Alston on Monday, after hearing of his passing, went on his website, Hudson County Chronicles, and I'm with him. He said, listen, why can't the city at some point rename the commercial strip of Central Avenue in the Heights Michael Youn Avenue? I'm all for that. It's a really big loss to Jersey City, Al.
Well, look, here's the one thing that I think a lot of people don't realize. You go down, Washington Street in Hoboken, in Jersey City. If you go to the end of it, all the way to the beginning of Liberty State Park, the northern side, there's a monument there to the Korea War veterans, okay, that would not exist if it wasn't for Michael Youn. Not only did he institute it, he funded it. He went back to Korea, and business organizations and military organizations in South Korea poured in several $100,000 to make sure that this monument to Americans who had lost their lives fighting for Korean freedom, that existed. They installed all these panels on it showing scenes of various things from the war, and he's responsible for it. He brought generals here from South Korea to praise Americans. This was a man who really, truly appreciated what America did for his country and allowed him to come here. And I had talked to him several times about it. It was one of the most. Had more pride in that than anything I know. And it's the fact that he understood the sacrifices that people made in his name, and he wanted to give back to them. And all of these events, all these military events, all of these tributes, whether it's Memorial Day or Veterans Day, he's there. He's brought people to these events from South Korea and other places in order to make sure that people didn't forget what happened and he didn't forget what happened. He's a very, very patriotic guy in every possible way you can imagine. And that's how I think of him.
Without a doubt, this loss hit Al Sullivan as well as myself and many residents very hard this week. And without a doubt, we'll continue to honor Michael Youn's legacy in the weeks and months ahead. Our second highlight for your consideration was certainly talking about his transition to the Tap Into Network. As we all know, the Dean of Hudson County Journalism has worked for the Hudson Reporter for many years, for Insider NJ, and now he calls the Tap Into Network home. As you're all aware, the Tap Into Network is available in many municipalities throughout the state of New Jersey, and even some local areas such as Hoboken and Bayonne here in Hudson County. Let's check out what Al had to say about the importance of not only the Tap Into Network, but local journalism overall.
I know that you recently took on a position with the Tap Into Network, and I got to tell you, man, I mean, I read Tap Into a lot. There are a lot of great Tap Into sites statewide when it comes to all the different municipalities that have Tap Into pages. And, it's a great news site. I read it often when I can. I mean, there's so much to read, whether it's, the Tap Into's locally, whether it's in Bayonne, whether it is local online publications in Hoboken, up here in North Hudson, and even statewide, though. What makes the Tap Into Network so diverse and really successful?
It depends on the person who bought the franchise.
Okay.
My boss, Steve Lennox, he bought 3 initially, which he bought one in Hamilton, God knows why. He bought Patterson, and he bought Bayonne. Okay. What we upgraded now is he bought Hoboken and Jersey City, and he's working
Very nice.
with
Very nice.
Chris Halloran. I don't know if you know him from H-Mag.
I'm familiar with him. Yeah.
He's doing the most of the Hoboken stuff. I'm doing Jersey City and Bayonne, but Steve is a hands-on guy. He's one of those people who shows up for events. He puts his face out there. He meets people. He shakes hands. Well, now he's in Ireland, but but he's one of those people who really, really needs to be part of put a face on. Not all the tap-ins have that. He happens to have that philosophy. I don't know. Do you know Mark Benamo?
I'm familiar with Mark. For the record, let me just say this right now on the air. I like Mark. He's an accomplished attorney. He's a very good journalist. He speaks well, but sometimes his social media posts just drive me crazy. But I love you, Mark.
Well, yeah, I give him a hard time, too. Well,
yeah.
I have the same problem with social media. I'm trying to cut back on my ranting and raving because it's unproductive. But Mark he runs the Newark Inc., which is another tap-in. And he he has that same kind of energy as a journalist, and that's what it takes. There are better tap-ins and there are lesser tap-ins. The main tap-in basically is an oversight for the whole state, and sometimes they share information. Like some of my stories, especially during a shooting in December, reached out to a lot of other tap-ins. But, and I've done stuff in Patterson and stuff, but it all depends on the owner of the franchise. And Steve Lennox in particular is very aggressive, and his attitude is this. I mean, he's a PR guy, and he's told people, this is not going to be a PR spit. This is a news organization. You're not always going to like what we write, but we're going to be fair. And that's the kind of philosophy that you want and that's what makes these particular tap-ins work very well. He also is hyper-local. He believes that news is local. People in Bayonne want to read about Bayonne. They'll read about the bigger stories, but they're particularly interested in the small stuff that affects their lives. And that's a philosophy that I particularly like. So it's a really good fit for me.
Once again, we spoke for over 90 minutes on this week's edition of the podcast, and I enjoy having Al Sullivan on the show as often as I can. And to listen to the episode in its entirety, you can listen to it by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson. You can do so and download it from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. So while you're home under quarantine, listen to it anywhere in the house while you're doing laundry, maybe having a snack, or even maybe, let's say, while you're playing games online on your phone. Have it in the background, and trust me, you'll definitely enjoy recent episodes. And you can listen to it live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m., once again, by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/TalkOnTheHudson. New episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.
And now to some local stories for your consideration. And a shout out to John Hines via the Hudson County View for reporting on the following. As U.S. Senators Robert Menendez and Cory Booker called for local journalism to be included in future COVID-19 relief packages. Now let me just give you some context here, folks, about what's going on here. Now both U.S. Senators called for local journalism and media to be included in any future COVID-19 packages, calling local news, quote, critically important during this pandemic. And let's be honest, I couldn't agree more. Now, and again, in a letter to Senate leadership this past week, both Senators Menendez and Booker warned that the widespread impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, including plummeting advertising revenue, could decimate regional and local news outlets, as communities have become increasingly reliant on their reporting. Already, some newspapers have reduced or eliminated print editions, with other news outlets like the Bergen Record, for example, having furloughed their staff. Senator Menendez wrote this week, quote, "The current public health crisis has made the already vital role of local news even more critical. Some of the most important guidance for families and businesses during this crisis has been highly localized," as they wrote in that letter. In addition, they went on to say local journalism has been providing communities answers to critical questions, including information on where to get locally tested, hospital capacity, road closures, essential business hours of operation, and shelter-in-place orders. During this unprecedented public health crisis, people need to have access to their trusted local news outlets for this reliable and sometimes life-saving information. Now, while private companies like Facebook and Twitter have offered grant opportunities for local news, recent research has demonstrated, folks, that they are the largest purveyor of spreading false information, as recently reported in Forbes magazine. Now, one of the things, ladies and gentlemen, that stands out for me about this call by both U.S. senators here in the Garden State is sort of like the level of importance that they're conveying. And as someone who, takes pride in being a journalist, and as someone who is not just only a commentator, but someone who takes pride in being a good political analyst, the importance of local journalists like myself and other news organizations cannot be minimized. And we can't overstate it enough about their importance to communities, not just in Hudson County, but throughout the state of New Jersey. So cheers to both Senators Cory Booker and Bob Menendez collectively for coming to the aid and to the rescue of local journalists and local journalistic outlets. I know there are oftentimes on this program, folks, I always take shots at the liberal media, especially on a national level. But here locally, folks, whether it be in Hudson County or statewide, there are a lot of wonderful and very reputable news organizations. First and foremost, at a state level, I'll think about Insider NJ. And I know what you're thinking. I'm a little biased because I work with Insider NJ. But folks, when you read Insider NJ by going to www.insidernj.com, you'll know it's the best journalism anywhere in the state of New Jersey. And of course, we have other online news outlets such as NJTV, certainly the Bergen Record, and the aforementioned Tap Into Networks, which I discussed earlier with my podcast guest, Al Sullivan. Without a doubt, these are the local institutions of journalism that keep residents informed and keep them up to date about what's going on during the COVID-19. Now, I'm not going to sit here and defend every single journalist or every single journalistic institution because I'm sure I have my criticisms and complaints about some of them. But regardless of that, any sort of future relief and any stimulus package that should be coming additionally from the one that's already been signed by Congress should definitely have relief for local journalists and local journalistic institutions. So, hey, bravo to U.S. Senators Cory Booker and Robert Menendez once again for standing up for journalism. Because sometimes other people won't go that far. But you know what? Here in the Garden State, our U.S. Senators did exactly that. So you know what? Bravo to them.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. New episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.
Here's another local story of considerable importance. As reported by Ron Zeliger at the Jersey Journal, the Hudson Department of Family Services is indeed taking all of its services online. Let me give you some facts here to sort of unpackage what's going on currently. Now, the Department of Family Services, which is located and having offices at both 257 Cornelissen Avenue in Jersey City and at the North Hudson campus of Hudson County Community College off of 48th Street in Union City, have been closed to the public to help halt the spread of the COVID-19. Now, the closures went into effect this past week, and while the department is closed until further notice, agency business is still being conducted by officials. Now, in a statement released this week, they wanted to say you do not need to come into the office to apply, renew, or provide documentation for benefits. Clients are being asked to visit www.njhelps.org and to speak to a caseworker, and they can do that also by calling 201-420-3000. Now, officials said that the public may deliver any document to a secure drop box outside of the entrances that will be clearly marked by signs. In addition, anyone who needs a replacement EBT card will be able to get them in person starting next week. Now, only those needing EBT replacement cards will be allowed to enter the offices during this time period. Now, ensuring that benefits are delivered while these efforts to slow the spread of the coronavirus are in place, that's indeed remaining a top priority according to officials in the agency. Now, while a number of temporary changes have been put into effect regarding social services that are administered at the County Division of Welfare, again, it's important to keep up to date by going to the aforementioned website. Now, county residents who also want to apply for SNAP food assistance or cash assistance under the Work First New Jersey program or the Family Care Medicaid program are asked to do so online once again by going to www.njhelps.org. Now, during the public health crisis, it's important to remember that interviews will be conducted by phone, so you don't need to come into the office to apply for benefits indeed. And Work First New Jersey cash assistance recipients were also due for redetermination. As a matter of fact, recently on April 1st and coming up on May 1st, will automatically get a 60-day extension. So ultimately, you don't need to come into the office. And for SNAP food assistance recipients, for example, whose cases were due to be certified on either April 1st or May 1st, those cases will not be closed. They will receive their benefits on a regularly scheduled day. Your case will be recertified after the crisis passes. In addition, folks, SNAP food assistance or Work First New Jersey cash assistance recipients are not required to attend work activities unless they want to, and the program is indeed operating. This includes people who are applying for the Work First New Jersey General Assistance and are also in a work activity for 28 days while their application is indeed being reviewed. No penalty will be assessed to you if you do not attend your work activity. Again, all emergency assistance recipients will automatically have their emergency benefits extended through April 30th of this year. For family care medical assistance recipients, also folks whose cases are due to be redetermined for March and April collectively, have not been able to get paperwork in or complete the redetermination application, their cases also will not be closed. So again, a shout out and a job well done by the Hudson Department of Family Services to take care of those most vulnerable in our population right now during the COVID-19 crisis. We'll keep you up to date here, ladies and gentlemen, on the program in the weeks and months ahead, should any changes be implemented or any modifications be done when it comes to these recipients. And that's our show for this week. To view all the excellent programming brought to you by the Hudson Media Group and NJ On Air, please go to their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com, www.livestream.com/hmgtv, and www.njonair.com. Don't forget to like the Hudson Media Group and NJ On Air on Facebook and follow them both on Instagram and Twitter. And don't forget that live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can listen to the 3-time award-winning podcast Talking the Hudson by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson. You can do so from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. While you're home under quarantine, listen to recent episodes, folks, and I welcome your feedback. And never forget, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, you know it's always talking politics right here with the Hudson Media Group and NJ On Air. I'm Fernando Uribe. Have a happy Easter, and thank you so much for watching.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. New episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.